Today I'm going to beat Pokemon FireRed with only the Golduck-line. Rules can be found in the description. While Psyduck is a very popular Pokemon and well remembered, largely due to Misty's Psyduck from the anime, Golduck doesn't share the same status. I think it might be one of the most neglected Generation 1 Pokemon because Game Freak hasn't done anything with it in recent years. I don't think that upcoming titles are going to change that, however, I would be really happy if I was wrong. In this FireRed series, I am evolving during my playthroughs, so today I'll be starting with Psyduck. Or I should say Golduck, because that's what I nickname it. After all, look at it. For base stats, it has 50 HP, 52 attack, 48 defense, 55 speed, 65 special attack, and 50 special defense. Honestly, it is a really balanced Pokemon. The only downside are its 3 starting moves: Water Sport, Scratch, and Tail Whip. Of course, the first of these is basically useless. Scratch is a decent normal type move, and while Tail Whip can lower defense, these 3 moves together are not going to be enough for me to defeat Brock. At level 10, it learns Disable, and at level 16, it learns Confusion. Very fittingly, because you'd think that Psyduck would be a Psychic type, but no, it is a Mono Water type. It makes no sense, and when it evolves, despite the fact that it gets this Psychic-looking gem in its forehead, no, it is not a Psychic type, it is still just a Mono Water type. When Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl originally released, I decided to use a Golduck on my team, and that was when I first discovered that this thing is a Mono Water type. I honestly always thought that it was a Psychic type until just a couple years ago. Anyways, to tackle Brock, I'm definitely going to need special damage, so today I'm going to level all the way to 16 before fighting him. This takes a decent amount of time with the medium fast growth rate, which really isn't great in the early game. To maximize the amount of trainer boosted experience I'm earning, I go back to the rival on Route 22. His starter here has not learned an elemental attack, so he's not a threat. To make things as difficult as I can on myself, I have had him choose Bulbasaur today, but that shouldn't be an issue long term because most water types get access to ice type coverage, and Psyduck is no different. Through TM and HM, it learns some amazing moves: Water Pulse, Calm Mind, Ice Beam, Blizzard, Iron Tail, Dig, Brick Break, Aerial Ace, Rest, and Surf. I think the obvious highlight among these moves is Calm Mind, which I will gain access to after I defeat Sabrina. But that's a ways off, and there are some things that I need to mention to you about the early game. Specifically how I'm gaining a lot of EVs training in the forest. In some cases this can be a good thing, especially if you want your Pokemon to gain a lot of HP, defense, and speed EVs. Those are the ones that are prominently available this early into the game. Unfortunately, there are very few attack and special attack EVs, and literally no special defense EVs available before Brock. Doing the training in the forest, bringing Psyduck up to level 16, means that I collect a total of 116 EVs. That is almost 23% of the total that I will collect throughout this playthrough. Of course, it would have been better if I could have earned more special attack EVs, but that's not how things go when Brock is a complete wall. But now that I have Confusion, I think Psyduck is going to be capable of taking him on. Geodude is first. It has terrible special defense, and I'm able to 2-shot it, moving on to the Onix. It goes for Rock Tomb first turn, lowering my speed, but now that Psyduck is slower than the Rock Snake, it is going to choose its other moves like Tackle or Bind, unless it sees that Rock Tomb has enough damage to knock me out. But Psyduck has more than enough health that it even gets a critical hit, knocking Brock's ace out in only 2 hits. Okay, so defeating the first gym leader was a slow task, but it was at least quite simple. Misty, on the other hand, might be a little bit more complex, because unlike a lot of Pokemon, Psyduck and Golduck cannot learn the move Thief. Access to the Dark-type moves gives super effective damage against her ace Starmie, and being able to defeat Misty quickly would give me access to Water Pulse. This would greatly improve Psyduck's pace because it would knock out more Pokemon in one hit during battles. There's a little bit of tension here on Route 3 because I have to make the decision whether I'm going to overtrain after overtraining for Brock, or if I should be skipping optional trainers and proceeding to Cerulean City as quickly as possible. I decided to take my time because thinking further ahead into the run, Psyduck is going to have to go up against Lieutenant Surge. Since it evolves at level 33, I would prefer to fight him as a Golduck if it's possible, but that might be unrealistic because usually Pokemon are around level 26 to 29 by the time they reach the 3rd gym. After extensive training in Mount Moon, when I clear the cave, my Psyduck is level 22. Now, just outside of the cave, I'm going to show you the Move Tutor moves that Psyduck can learn because it can get access to both Mega Punch and Mega Kick. I choose to teach it both of these moves because Tail Whip and Disable are pretty useless at this point. Mega Punch is a little bit more reliable, and it's a good normal type move at this point in the game, and Mega Kick can really come through for you when you're in a pinch and you need a lot of damage. My hope here is that it can be the ticket to defeating Misty early. Inside her gym, I fight the 2 optional trainers, leveling Psyduck up to 23, I give it a Person Berry, and now I'm ready for my second gym battle. Staryu is first. I go for Confusion because this thing is a mono water type. Unfortunately, it does slightly less than half, and the Staryu uses Water Pulse, which causes confusion. This is not a good start. Luckily, I crit on the next turn with Mega Punch, knocking her lead out, and that leads me to Starmie. Okay, please Mega Kick, do enough. In this case, it's not doing half, and the Starmie is using Swift, which is okay damage for it. My next attack misses, and while I do bring the Starmie down to red health, she just uses a Super Potion, and my Psyduck doesn't have enough health to survive. If I don't miss Mega Kick, I should be able to defeat her, but in the very next fight, I miss 2 of them in a row and then run out of PP. In my third battle against Misty, I start using a slightly different strategy. If I scratch the Starmie twice, then I can use 2 follow-up Mega Kicks and hopefully knock it out without her using a Super Potion. And yeah, this does end up working out, but no, Mega Kick ruins my day, missing at the critical moment. I had to come back for a 4th attempt to finally defeat the Starmie and earn myself the TM for Water Pulse. I teach it in the place of Scratch, and with the same type attack bonus, this move has an effective power of 90. Plus, it has the secondary effect of a 20% chance to confuse. The rival on Nugget Bridge is next, and he leads with his Pidgeotto. This has to be one of the most annoying lead Pokemon in the entire franchise. I spend a little bit of time reordering my moves, then I go for Water Pulse, which does more than half, but not enough for the knockout, allowing the bird to land a Sand attack, messing with my accuracy. I finish his ace off, level up to 24, and then he sends in Bulbasaur. Okay, so Confusion is super effective, and I don't want to risk the accuracy of Mega Kick, so I go for it. But his ace puts Psyduck to sleep with Sleep Powder, and Vine Whip is doing a lot of damage. I wake up just in time, use Confusion, but it misses because of Sand Attack, and Bulbasaur defeats me. I wasn't expecting to have this many problems in Cerulean City with Psyduck. I figured the tutor moves would be enough to smash Misty, and then Water Pulse would give me a path to victory here against the rival. But what it really takes is the Pidgeotto not using Sand Attack, then I can hopefully 2-shot the Bulbasaur after Sleep Powder. Well, in this case it just misses Poison Powder and I knock it out, so that's another way to win. Mega Punch 1-hits the Abra, and the following Rattata is a 1-shot with Water Pulse. On Route 25 I take my time fighting 1 additional trainer. He's quite fast when you have super effective damage against rock types. This allows me to move the camper out of the way and then grab the TM for Secret Power. This is a far more reliable normal type of move, so I let go of Mega Kick. Outside of Cerulean City facing the Rocket, I have a little bit of a scary situation where his Drowsy puts Psyduck to sleep, but luckily it doesn't end in a loss. I have a lot of HP. On the SSN, I heal myself, and then I spend some time battling optional trainers. Right now, Psyduck is level 29, and I figured if I put the time in here, it could level up to 33 before I face Surge. But by the time I'm facing the rival, I'm only level 30 on my way to level 31, so I'm just barely not going to make it unless I use rare candies, and that's generally premature in first playthroughs. The best time to use them tends to be right before the Elite Four, and I think that's especially true today because Golduck as a water type doesn't pair well against Lorelei. The rival here was not nearly as difficult, likely because I got a Confusion against the Ivysaur. It hit itself and never got to use Sleep Powder, but a win is a win. Upon entering Surge's gym, I'm getting close to level 32, so I decided to fight all of the gym trainers here, and I am going to make a slightly risky play, banking on the fact that Calm Mind is going to give me an answer to Lorelei later on. So I'm using 1 rare candy to bring Psyduck up to level 33, where it evolves into Golduck. Its base stats get a major boost, but they're still quite well rounded. 80 HP, 82 attack, 78 defense, 95 special attack, 80 special defense, and 85 speed. I think this upgrade is going to be more than enough to take on Surge. His first Pokemon is Voltorb. Golduck is faster, I use Water Pulse, and 1-shot. Next is Pikachu. My special attack is still higher than my physical attack, so I'm going to continue going for Water Pulse, and once again I get a 1-hit. Alright, that leaves only his Raichu. This one is definitely going to survive, and I made a small error here, not equiping a Cherry Berry before this fight. So when it uses Thunder Wave, it paralyzes Golduck, and then Surge uses a Super Potion, and I'm not able to attack. Raichu boosts its evasion with Double Team. My Water Pulse does connect, taking it back down to yellow health, but this is not over because the electric type starts attacking with Shockwave. It looks like it's doing about a quarter, so I should have 3 turns to land 1 Water Pulse. With a 75% chance to hit, this is very likely to occur, and it does right away, so Surge is defeated. With the Thunder Badge, Golduck gets a 10% boost to its speed stat, and from here on out I shouldn't be moving second against most foes. On Route 6, after defeating Picnicker Alicia, formerly known as the Wrapping Lass, I pick up the TM for Aerial Ace, and this move makes me want to talk about Golduck's physical coverage. Whenever I'm doing a solo challenge in Pokemon Emerald, I usually go for a Naughty or Rash nature to boost my primary offensive stat and lower my defensive stat. I know in competitive it tends to be the case that Adamant and Modest natures are best, and generally that's probably the case for solo challenges as well, but having access to physical moves for coverage without them having reduced damage is generally the safer first attempt bet. Starting in this series, I've been using neutral natures, mostly just hardy, which means no stat is increased or decreased. But that being said, with Golduck, it wouldn't even make sense to run a Rash nature, because while it does learn decent moves for physical coverage, like Iron Tail, Dig, Brick Break, and Aerial Ace, I'm probably never going to use them in the late game, because once this thing gets access to Calm Mind, it is going to become exclusively a special attacker. You might think that right now, Aerial Ace would be useful against some bug and grass type Pokemon. After all, Erika is coming up next, but I anticipate it isn't going to take me that long to gain access to Ice Beam, which is purchasable at the game corner for 4,000 coins. This costs a total of 80,000 Pokédollars, and after selling a bunch of the items that I've collected in the Celadon department store, I have almost 40,000. In the Rocket Hideout, there are a couple of high-priced items that I can pick up, this hidden nugget, as well as the calcium on the desk. I'm sure you can assume that Giovanni was incredibly easy. The Onix and the Rhyhorn are both one hits with my water type move, but the Kangaskhan isn't quite as simple. It does take 3 hits to knock out, but its bites are doing almost nothing. The money from the battles in the hideout, as well as the items that I just sold, brings me up to 57,000 Pokédollars, so I'm still not going to be able to buy Ice Beam, but I might be able to beat Erika just utilizing Confusion. Victory Bell is up first. I am level 40, which is very over-leveled by this point in the game, so Confusion one-shots her lead. Next is Tangela. I do not one-shot it, but it just uses Ingrain, then she uses a potion on it, and I knock it out over 2 turns. Last is Vileplume. I go for Confusion. It doesn't do enough, taking it only to yellow. It strikes back with Stun Spore, paralyzing Golduck, and this makes the fight much closer because then it can use Giga Drain to slowly heal itself while I fail to attack. I land another Confusion, taking it down to red health. It goes for 1 more Giga Drain, bringing Golbat to red, and luckily I get my next attack in, and that's that for Erika. Knowing just how bad Stun Spore could be, I think I should have fought her using a Cherry Berry. That would have solved a lot of the issues in this fight, although I still would have been exposed to a potential loss through Sleep Powder, so the safest option here definitely would have been waiting for Ice Beam. I'm gonna have to journey through Pokemon Tower next, so I'll fly back to Lavender Town, but I want to do one thing first. My Golduck is no longer looking very gold. It's looking a little bit more Psy, so I'm going to use the Name Raider to rename it Psyduck. I just think that this is much more appropriate. Rival 4. This one's fairly straightforward. I can one-shot the Pidgeotto with Water Pulse, and then use Confusion to two-shot the Ivysaur. Its Razor Leaf doesn't even do that much. From there, I have to knock the Gyarados out over 3 turns, but Thrash can't do enough damage, and I just clean up the Growlithe and the Kadabra. In Generation 1, the Chandler and the Tower tend to be problematic because they can cause a lot of issues with Lick and Confuse Ray, but in Generation 3, they tend to never be an issue, and this is a generality that you can apply to most Generation 3 games. The major battles are likely going to be more difficult than they are in Generation 1, but all of the random NPCs are going to be far easier. After clearing Pokemon Tower and selling a few more items, I now have 80,000 Pokédollars, so I can buy my 4,000 coins, purchase TM13, and teach Golduck Ice Beam in the place of Mega Punch. Cycling Road is a great place to do some training, especially if you have a Psychic type move. And here I just want to draw attention to the fact that Golduck cannot in fact learn Psychic. This completely baffles me, especially because it gets Confusion through level up. This is the only damage-dealing Psychic type move that it can learn, even though it gets access to the Calm Mind TM. I thought that for sure it would learn Psychic in Generation 1, and I went and checked, but no it doesn't. The first time it can learn that move through TM is in Generation 4. Anyways, Confusion is more than enough for me to defeat some easy fighting types and poison types on this route for extra experience. Just before the Safari Zone, it is time to get the best move in the game, which is Substitute. Golduck learns it from a single-use move tutor, and for that reason, I am probably not going to want to delete it for the rest of the run. After completing the Safari Zone, I teach Golduck Surf in the place of Water Pulse because this is the best water type move in the game, and then I head to Koga's gym, fighting one optional trainer for additional experience. Golduck is now level 45, and it has all the tools it's going to need to defeat Koga. His lead is Coughing. I can establish Substitute on it, blocking Poison as well as Smokescreen. I use Confusion to knock it out. I'm just trying to save power points on Surf because the Coughing is so weak anyway. I continue using this move against Muck because I didn't want to put it to low health where he would use a healing item. On the next turn I followed it up with Surf for more damage, but it still doesn't do enough. The Muck survives and Koga uses a Hyper Potion anyways. This thing loves to use Minimize, so I'm going to be missing occasionally, but my next two Surfs luckily hit, knocking his second Pokemon out. In most playthroughs that is his strongest Pokemon, so things should be easier from here. I one-shot the next Coughing and move on to his ace, Wheezing. Confusion does more than half, it tries Toxic, and with that I've earned myself the 5th badge. Sylph is next, and I'm finding that it's safest to fight the rival at level 50 when going in blind. Because of that, I'm going to take my time to train with Golduck. By the way, while recording this voiceover, I have said Golbat so many times because of the similarity between these two Pokemon's names. I've never noticed myself struggling with this before, but that's mostly just because you never have to talk about Golduck because this thing almost doesn't exist, and that's thanks to Game Freak completely neglecting it, making it irrelevant in modern times. While I was training in Sylph, I realized that I should also buy one more item from the game corner, which is the Mystic Water to boost the power of water type moves by 10%. In most FireRed playthroughs, it is very hard to get type boosting held items, so Water, Fire, and Grass type Pokemon get a small advantage because their items can be purchased here. If you're wondering where all of the other items are, you have to catch Pokemon that have a 5% chance of holding them, and that's just not a time-conscious approach in a playthrough like this. Next is Cinnabar Island. The mansion is fairly simple. I pick up the rare candy as well as the elixir, and then in Blaine's gym, I fight some trainers for additional experience, but only enough to level up to 50. I didn't want to overtrain because Golduck is going to make up for its lack of levels with Calm Mind. Technically, I could have been a little bit safer and fought Sabrina before Blaine, but I don't think that that's relevant. He's a fire type specialist and Golduck is just gonna smash him. His first Pokemon is Growlithe. It's weak, so I can establish Substitute here and then sweep through his team utilizing Surf. His lead, as well as the Ponyta, go down in single hits. Then he sends in Rapidash. It's also a one hit, so yeah, this is probably going to be a clean sweep. Arcanine is last. I use Surf, and yes, it faints to a single hit as well. Okay, time to head back to Sylph and face the rival. His lead is Pidgeot. I'm going to go for Substitute against it because it loves to use Wing Attack, which is fairly weak, as well as Feather Dance. With my defense established, Ice Beam one-shots and he sends in his ace, Venusaur. I was hoping that Ice Beam would two-shot, but in this case it does one better, taking it out in a single turn. From there, I can clean up the Gyarados using 2 Ice Beams, and like in Pokemon Tower, his Growlithe and Alakazam are simple. Giovanni is probably stronger in this battle than he is in his final gym appearance, and that's saying a lot, because he's not very good here. The reason I say that is because the Kangaskhan is decent, but of course Golduck isn't having any issues. Sabrina's next. She leads with Kadabra. Surf one-shots. This is going to be an easy one, isn't it? Mr. Mime goes down to a one-hit. While the Venomoth is super effective against Golduck, that is an inside joke for any new viewers, I can still one-shot it with Surf, and then the Alakazam is no different, so that is an easy 7th badge, and with it comes the TM for Calm Mind. Churro says hi, he's my orange cat if you didn't know, and he's really loud every time I want to record one of these voiceovers. I teach Calm Mind to Golduck in the place of Confusion because Surf and Ice Beam paired together should be enough for the late game. The one flaw with this pairing is that Golduck only has not very effective damage against water types, so Lorelei is going to be a bit of a slog. But Giovanni is going to be the complete opposite. Surf one-shots Rhyhorn, Dugtrio, Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and his ace Rhyhorn. Rival 6 leads with Pidgeot. This fight is really simple because it can establish Substitute here and then set up behind it with Calm Mind. If the Pidgeot breaks my Substitute, I can just re-establish it and continue with Calm Mind. I figured I wouldn't need to set up that much, so at +2 I decide to sweep. Ice Beam one-shots the Flying type as well as his ace. Surf takes care of the Rhyhorn, the Gyarados just tries to use Rain Dance before going down, and then I one-shot the Growlithe and the Alakazam. Yeah, I don't anticipate I'm going to have any problems against the champion after how these battles have gone. On my way towards Victory Road, I want to point out some hidden items. Over here, there is a Leppa Berry, and then on this island, there is a Max Ether. Just before the cave, there is a Full Restore, as well as a Citrus Berry, and I'm drawing your attention to these because sometimes they can be useful if you have used these items earlier on into a run. The PP restoring items are very useful if you want to do the league rematches, because making it through the Elite Four twice is quite a challenge with only one Pokemon when you have moves like Surf and Ice Beam. During Victory Road, I have a little bit of a mistake with Golduck where I bump into Cool Trainer Colby. He is the guy with 5 water type Pokemon. Because of the type effectiveness I discussed before, this is really unfortunate. In a moment like this, it would be great if Golduck had a move like Psychic, but the combo of Substitute and Calm Mind is very powerful, and even though I was a little bit worried because I started the fight with less than full health, I am able to make it. So I have arrived at the league with only a Golduck. Let's see how I can do against Lorelei. Dewgong is first, and its moveset functions very similarly to how I'm playing my Golduck. In this case, I'm setting up with Substitute and Calm Mind, but it's trying to set up with Safeguard and Hail. That gives me a lot of time to boost my special attack and special defense. My Substitute uses these defensive stats when damage is calculated against it with Dewgong's Surf, and because of that, every time I re-establish Substitute, it's just going to be stronger and stronger. Once I reach +6, I attack with Surf, and I one-shot the Dewgong. Alright, that is perfect. That means the Cloyster is also going to go down to a single hit because it has pathetic special defense. Next is Slowbro, which also falls to a single hit. I one-shot the Jinx and move on to Lapras. Now, one thing I didn't recognize here is that this Pokemon has Water Absorb, so I cannot attack into it with Surf. I lose one turn because of that and it breaks my Substitute. I re-establish it. It's using Body Slam, and Ice Beam really isn't doing much because Lapras has a double resistance to it. Golduck just barely can't set up Substitute again, and Lapras crits with Body Slam, giving me a loss. Earlier in the playthrough, I had forgotten to pick up the rare candy from the Warden's house, so I backtracked to grab that so that Golduck can be one level higher to take on Lorelei. I make it back to her Lapras, but this time she paralyzes me with Body Slam and then heals with a Full Restore. I bring her ace back down to red health. She uses a second Full Restore, crushing my hopes, and once again Golduck is defeated. The strategy here is actually really interesting. When I set up to +6, I have enough damage to bring the Lapras into the range where Lorelei wants to heal it with the Full Restore, but if I only set up to +5, I can bring the Lapras down to lowish health where it eats a Citrus Berry. This takes it out of the range that triggers Lorelei's Full Restores, and my final Ice Beam can knock it out. So that fight wasn't difficult, I just needed to figure out a little bit of information, and that was the key to victory. Against Bruno, I can play more mindlessly, setting up only once, and then I sweep his team using Surf. Agatha is probably going to be the same because her initial team is just not very good. She is far more potent in the league rematches. The first Gengar is the perfect opportunity to set up because it loves to use Double Team, Toxic, and Confuse Ray, all moves which are blocked by Substitute. With only +2 attack, Golduck can sweep her entire team in 5 one-hits. Okay, so this water type is really good in the late game. Well, it's more like Calm Mind in combination with Substitute is really good in the late game. And for Golduck, things are not going to slow down now because Lance is next, and of course I have Ice Beam. That said, I was a little overconfident here going into the fight without healing. The Gyarados is able to break my Substitute with decent regularity, so I had to re-establish it, and then I decided to knock the lead out with Ice Beam. I crit right away, taking it down in 1 turn. Okay, so let's just sweep his team, I guess. Ice Beam one-hits both of the Dragonairs. Next is Dragonite, which of course goes down to a single hit, and that leaves only Aerodactyl, which Golduck outspeeds and one-shots with Surf. The last 2 battles against the rival were pretty simple, and I expect that the champion is going to follow suit. His lead is always Pidgeot, always this thing. Luckily, it can't hit me with Sand Attack if I have a substitute in place. This gives me a lot of time to set up with Calm Mind. I get to +4 and then I remember the Pidgeot has Whirlwind. By the way, when you get past +3, it makes it much more common for the AI to choose this move. So I really shouldn't have been setting up that much, maybe just go to +2 and then knock it out. This time the Pidgeot breaks my substitute, forcing me to set it up again before I finally get to +2 and knock it out. Venusaur goes down to a single Ice Beam. The Alakazam that follows does survive, but I freeze it and it defrosts right away, hitting with Psychic, breaking my substitute. The rival heals with a full restore, but this doesn't matter because Surf has more damage and one-shots. Rhydon goes down to a single hit. Next is Gyarados. I can't set up substitute here, so I'm just going to 2-hit using Ice Beam, and all that's left is Arcanine. I thought right here I had won because Golduck is a water type and it is a fire type, plus I have Calm Mind set up, but this thing has extreme speed, so it has priority, and that causes a loss. What's the chance that things play out like that again? I know that I'm not going to overset up on the Pidgeot, so I'm not going to waste time there, but this time the bird just keeps attacking, breaking all of my substitutes, and I don't even have one by the time I arrive at the Gyarados. Hilariously, I survive its hit with exactly 18 hit points again. Yes, this is the exact same scenario against the Arcanine. So in a complete deja vu, it knocks Golduck out with extreme speed again. Turns out the Pidgeot isn't always that awful. Sometimes it just tries Sand Attack a bunch, lets me set up for free, I keep my substitute, have green health, and then I knock it out. From there, Gyarados can break my substitute, but it can't do any damage, and with green health, I easily survive Arcanine's attack and knock it out with Surf. Golduck clocks in with a first playthrough time of 1 hour 24 minutes and 36 seconds with 8 resets at level 69. This is a game time of 5 hours and 4 minutes. Overall, this is a really nice finish for the water type. It's gonna rank pretty well in the tier list, but I'll do that at the end of the video, because we still need to examine how Golduck does in the post game. My approach to this segment is starting the timer when Oak is talking to me in Pallet Town, and then I can see how long this section of the game takes independent of the main run. Once I do a few more of these, we'll also then be able to compare Pokemon's post games with each other, so let's get into it with Golduck. The portion of the game in the Sevi Islands is very uninteresting because I'm not going to change my moveset at all. Also, believing in the power of Calm Mind, I didn't invest in too much additional training, so by the time Golduck is ready to face Lorelei again, it is just about level 73, roughly 3 levels higher than it was the first time it beat the league. As I get more experience against the rematches, I am learning that some of them are more difficult than their first iterations, and some of them are less difficult. Lorelei is the latter of these examples. In the first attempt against the league, her Dugong is far more intimidating because it doesn't just like to spam double team over and over and over again. Also, the fact that my Pokemon gets access to leftovers means that things like Calm Mind and Substitute are far more potent against her. I should mention her Cloyster is a little bit trickier because it does no Ice Beam now, but in general it's not that scary. The Jinx is faster because it's at a higher level, but the Piloswine is basically incompetent. Now, I realize I set this all up as Lorelei being much easier this time, but that is not the case when you're using a water type, because the Lapras has a fantastic moveset: Ice Beam, Surf, Psychic, and Thunder. The last of these moves causes some serious pain for Golduck. I have to set up my substitute over and over again, but still, because of Calm Mind, she can't break my substitute in one turn, and eventually I'm able to finish her ace off. After that, Surf one-hits her final 3 Pokemon. Unlike Lorelei, with most Pokemon, Bruno is significantly more difficult the second time you face him. But with Golduck, that's not the case. Calm Mind with Surf is just more than enough here. His team is strongest if you're weak to rock or ground type moves, or you don't have a good solution to the Steelix. This livestream I did with Exceptional when I used Raichu is a great example of Bruno being awful during the league rematches. If you want to see me experience some serious pain, check it out. Agatha is much more difficult the second time you face her. This is because her movesets are dramatically better, and Misdreavus is overall just a better Pokemon than the Haunter. It has Attract as well as Thunderbolt, and the final Gengar also has this electric type attack. She's not going to be an issue with Golduck today though, because her first Gengar is still not very good, so if you have a setup move, you can just take your time against it, get maxed out, and then sweep her team. Like Lorelei, Lance is easier during the rematches because his first Gyarados just wants to spam Thunder Wave if you're faster than it. Using Substitute, I can completely block the electric type attack, set up for free, and then sweep his team with Ice Beam. So the only remaining trainer is the champion, and he is much stronger in the rematches. His Tyranitar specifically forces leftovers because Sandstream is such a fantastic ability. Theoretically, you can play around it with Rain Dance and Sunny Day, but that doesn't make any sense for Golduck. His first Pokemon Heracross is a little bit annoying because it breaks my substitute fairly regularly, forcing me to continuously re-establish it. But as long as I'm able to get in one Calm Mind before it breaks it again, I'm gonna be fine. After getting to +3, I figured that this was gonna be enough, so let's see if I can sweep. Surf takes out the Heracross, next he sends in Tyranitar, but I have a type advantage here. While Sandstorm is gonna chip away at me and neutralize the leftovers recovery, I still feel like I'm in a decent position. Ice Beam one-shots the Venusaur, preventing its damage, Surf takes care of the Alakazam, and then I 2-hit the Gyarados because it has Dragon Dance, so in this case it's prioritizing that move to try to outspeed Golduck. All that remains is Arcanine, and of course it goes down to a single Surf. This gives Golduck a league rematch time of 17 minutes and 52 seconds with 0 resets at level 78 and a game time of 6 hours and 14 minutes. For comparison, this section of the game took me over an hour with Golbat and over 30 minutes with Crobat. Golduck completely smashed the late game of FireRed. Overall, I think this line is really underrated. The most painful part of this run is getting Psyduck to level 16 just so it can use Confusion against Brock. This line would be massively improved if it started with a move like Water Gun. If I was doing a follow-up playthrough, or if any of you are going to run Golduck in this game, definitely a modest nature is best. I didn't have to use any of my physical attacks outside of the earliest portions of the game, and you really don't need extra attack when grinding on weak Pokemon in Viridian Forest. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships. You are enabling me to go on this quest of beating every single game with every single species. Right now it might seem impossible, but I believe that we can make it happen. If you made it this far in the video, you're incredible. Now let's rank Golduck. With a time of 1 hour 24 minutes and 36 seconds, it earns itself the second place spot in the B tier just behind Nidoking and ahead of Mew. Next time I play FireRed, I'm going to be using only Porygon, and I am really excited to see how that unique digital duck does. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video.